a little crooked. Larry Summers steps back from public life after a trove of Epstein emails reignites old controversies and sparks new investigations. More than half of all U.S. homes have lost value over the past year. We'll break down what that means for buyers, sellers, and the broader economy. The MAGA movement shows signs of cracking as Donald Trump flips on releasing the Epstein files and appears to lose his grip on his own base. Shark Tank faces its worst ratings ever. We look at whether the network is really ready to move on from one of its signature franchises. Billionaire Bill Ackman's viral dating advice becomes a nationwide punchline, and I'm going to take a contrarian view on that. And Ted Danson, at age 77, explains why life gets better when you refuse to slow down. All that and more today. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. It is November 18th, 2025. Thanks so much for joining me. This is Filtered, and we're going to dive right in. But first, as we always do, let's take a look at yesterday's market vitals. S&P 500 closed at 6,612.41. That's down 0.92%. The NASDAQ Composite closed at 22,708.08. That's down 0.86%. Always keep in mind the long term. We're about long-term habits and mindsets here at Filtered. Over the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 8.32% a year. The NASDAQ 100 has gone up 9.09% a year. So please keep in mind the long term. Let's dive right in with the top story of the day. Larry Summers steps back after Epstein revelations. According to The Guardian and all other news organizations, former Treasury Secretary and Harvard economist Larry Summers says he is stepping back from public life. Probably a good idea. After documents released by Congress revealed years of emails with Jeffrey Epstein, including Epstein referring to himself as Summers' wingman. Summers says he is deeply ashamed and takes full responsibility for staying in contact with Epstein long after Epstein's conviction for sexually abusing young girls. For right now, and I want to say just for right now, Summers will continue teaching at Harvard, but is pausing other public commitments in an effort to rebuild trust. The Center for American Progress has ended its relationship with him, and lawmakers from both parties are calling on companies and institutions to cut ties. Senator Elizabeth Warren said Summers' willingness to cozy up to a convicted sex offender shows profoundly bad judgment. The emails exchanged from 2013 to as late as 2019 show Summers seeking Epstein's thoughts on politics, on relationships, and, get ready for the ick, on how to respond to women in his personal life. The revelations have sparked a Trump-ordered investigation and renewed anger among Harvard faculty. Okay, so what's the real message here? Larry Summers, you need to go hide in a cave. Nobody wants to see your face anymore for a long time, maybe forever. You were the Secretary of the Treasury for the United States. You were president of Harvard, and you're getting advice on dating women from Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, after the whole world knew he was a pedophile. That's just too much to swallow. There's no crisis communications consultant in the world who's going to bring you back from public life death. Let's dig a little deeper here. So these are interesting times we live in, and it's never been easier to find out any skeleton in the closet of anyone, any friend, your next door neighbor, colleague, and you can find out good and bad. I mean, I moved recently. My next door neighbor, I didn't know anything about him. Yeah, I did a quick Google search. Found out he is one of the most successful TikTok superstars ever. So I found out good things about him. but you can also find out the bad. Now, I don't think that we should ask someone who's invited us to a party, having a dinner party, TJ, you and 12 other interesting people in our community are coming over. I think it would be a bit much for me or you to say to the person, the host, okay, give me the full name, full legal name, and address of the people coming. I have to do a background search before I can see if it's okay for me to come. I don't want to live in a world like that because people can have mistakes when they're younger. They can do stupid things. They can have some sort of rant on Facebook from 16 years ago when they were young and stupid. That shouldn't prevent them from forming new relationships. But this is different. This is someone who was arguably the most famous pedophile in the world, Jeffrey Epstein, and Lawrence Summers, Larry, is still emailing him back and forth like it's his best friend from college and about women he wants to date. And it's just going too far. Now, the other thing about Larry Summers is he's already been in a lot of hot water with women in general, specifically women at Harvard, because of something that happened during his tenure as the president of Harvard. Again, this is a guy who has been a big shot for a long, long time. In 2005, now 20 years ago, Summers suggested that fewer women in top science roles may reflect, quote, innate differences. This created a lot of outrage, a no confidence vote, and it ultimately did lead to his resignation from Harvard because 5 years is not that long a time to be president of Harvard, and he was only about 55 at the time. He's now 70 years old. And he's already rich. He's already famous. I mean, this is a guy who's in a lot of things. He teaches, he's a part of a hedge fund, he advises people, he's a speaker around the world. He gets to write op-eds for the New York Times. Most of those things are going to fall away now. I do think that if you have been given public positions of extreme authority, which if you're the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, you're pretty powerful. If you are president of the oldest university in the United States, and arguably, if not the most prestigious university in the world, one of the top three, if you have positions like that, you do have to be a little more careful about who you hang out with, especially if the person is a convicted pedophile. Maybe you just say, delete. They call you, they email you, delete. Or maybe one email saying, I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to end the friendship, and then delete. But there's back and forth, all these emails of, oh, what should I say to this girl? I think she likes me. And I don't, that's just icky at a lot of different levels. But when you combine it with some of this baggage Summers had before, with the fact that he's now getting advice on dating from a convicted pedophile, it's just too much. Senator Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, is calling for Harvard to sever ties with him. And she was, before being a senator, a professor at the law school at Harvard. So a lot of people are saying it's just time for him to shuffle off. And maybe he should be like Spiro Agnew. That's a name, a blast from the past. Many of you don't remember. He was a disgraced former vice president. He was Richard Nixon's running mate in 1968, was caught basically putting envelopes of cash from bribes for tens of thousands of dollars. Sounds quaint now in the era of your own meme coins to become a billionaire when you're in the White House. But at the time, it was considered sleazy behavior. And Agnew had to sort of skedaddle off the national stage. And to his credit, he acted like he was ashamed. He moved to Rancho Mirage, a affluent part of Southern California, and played golf the rest of his life. He didn't go on redemption tours. Yeah, he didn't try to start his own TV talk show. He just sort of, slunked off. That may very well be the best strategy for Larry Summers. Now, before I write him off, it's important to realize that, a lot of people wrote off Donald Trump when the whole Access Hollywood tapes came out. Arguably, that's worse than this, but Summers is in a different party with different values, different standards. I think it's going to be very hard for him to come back from this, especially at his age, and especially considering the wealth, all the good things that have happened to him in his life. Could he remake himself with charitable works, donating to charities, doing things where no one could say, look, he's just doing this for publicity purposes? Possibly. What's the real lesson for you and me? No, I don't think we have to hire a background private investigator to look into every single person we're friends with. But at some point, especially if you're a public figure or aspire to be a public figure, if you're spending a lot of time around someone where most people have now heard this person is a sex offender or been convicted of some other heinous crime, you're going to need to cut off ties. Otherwise, you seriously run the risk of destroying your own reputation and making yourself unemployable. And we can't all be Larry Summers and be fabulously wealthy and have 8 different jobs and hedge fund positions and have that nice cushion. So that's why it's even more important for you and for me. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Okay, well, enough of Larry. I'm going to just get him right off the screen right now, and maybe we won't have to hear much about him. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. Thanks so much for joining me today. Issue 2. More than half of U.S. homes lose value. According to Yahoo Finance, more than half of all American homes have lost value over the last year. 53% of homes were down as of October, the highest level since 2012. Nationally, prices are roughly flat, but that headline number hides major regional differences. Prices are falling across much of the South and West, while rising in many parts of the Midwest and Northeast. Denver leads the declines with 91% of homes below their peak, followed by 89% in Austin and 88% in Sacramento. Even so, Zillow's chief economist says this is the best news buyers have seen in years. Well, yeah, if you want to buy, as affordability finally begins to improve. Most homeowners still remain far ahead of where they started, with median equity gains of roughly 67% after years of rapid price growth. What's the real message here? Pay attention to the news. More than half of all homes in America went down in value in the last 12 months. Does that mean you should never buy a house? No. But if you're buying a house because you think, wow, this is the surest way to gain wealth, you are mistaken. House prices go up and they go down. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Full disclosure, I do own a house. And my pet peeve is not that housing prices went down this year. They do all the time, and nobody talks about it. You never go to a cocktail party and someone says, wow, I just did this real estate deal. I sold my house and wow, what do you know? I lost $10,000. I lost $100,000. People don't like to brag about that. Everyone likes to talk about how smart they are. They doubled their money. They tripled their money. They never really factor in all expenses or what their true costs were or what their same amount of money would have done if they put it into an index fund and rented. Let's dig a little deeper into some of the facts here. It's not that housing prices are just plummeting. It's not like somebody bought a house for $2 million 6 months ago and you can now get it for $300,000. It's not like that, but it is going down for most Americans. I'm in that too. Believe me, I don't want any sympathy from you. I bought a house, closed in March, I guess really nailed down the price and everything a little less than a year ago. I'm sure, and I haven't even checked, I don't even want to know, the value of my house has gone down. Doesn't matter to me because I was never under the illusion that housing prices could go up. And I did not put a significant percentage of my net worth into this house, nor do I think that's a good idea in general. Let's look at some more of the facts. The average drop from peak is 9.7%. Median homeowner equity still up roughly 67%. Only 4.1% of homes are below their last sale price. So yeah, it went down last year, but if you bought your house 4 years ago, it's probably still higher than that. Why am I spending time on this? Because I do think that we live in a culture, and it happens in other countries too, but especially in the United States, where it's beaten into you that you have to own a home or you're fiscally irresponsible. Not true. A home is the best investment you'll ever make. It's simply not true. Now, it is true if you buy a home and you're very irresponsible and you never save any money for your retirements and you have no 401k, no investments put away, nothing in the stock market. If you have nothing else and you eventually pay off your home and you sell it, well, yeah, then it is the most significant investment you ever made because it's the only investment you ever made. If you put $10,000 into a savings account and that's all you ever did, and you got 2% a year for 50 years, you still wouldn't have a lot for retirement. But yeah, that would be the most significant investment you ever made. So I want to caution you before you leap into buying a house, or especially if you are so leveraged, you're buying a house much more expensive than you can really afford because you think, well, it's a sure thing. You always get your money back. You hear that again and again and again, not just by real estate agents, but by average people and even successful people. It's simply not true. You can definitely overpay for a house. People do it every day. Now, the average drop, as I mentioned, is 9.7%. But if you were to buy a house a year ago and your price dropped 9.7%, and then you sold your house, well, you wouldn't be losing 9.7%. You'd be losing another 6 to 10%. You could be 20% down by the time you factored in all of your closing costs and legal costs and taxes, even on losses. So this can be a big factor. If all of a sudden you get your dream job, you just bought a house in Atlanta, now you got to move to Denver because your dream job says, hey, we love you. Here's a salary increase. You got to move here. You're going to have to move your house, move and sell your house. Well, now you've potentially lost 20%. Whereas if you had rented and taken that down payment and put it in the S&P 500, well, certainly in the last year, you would have made out like a bandit. You would have made a lot of money if you had done that. So I think stories like this just don't get enough attention. They are a very small blip at the bottom of a financial page. Whereas every single day, our entire culture, your parents sometimes, grandparents, every real estate agent you ever meet will say, that's never been a better time to buy. Market's way up. Everybody's buying. You got to get in. Things are great. If it's an absolute recession, depression, and housing prices are falling, they'll be like, never a better time to buy because there's so many good deals. And look, I get it. Everyone has a certain self-interest, and it's very hard to see the world and understand data if it's against what has an impact on your own pocketbook. So I don't expect real estate agents to give me an honest assessment of what's a good deal and when is a good time to buy, because they will say it's always a good time to buy. My message to you is uh, no, quite often it's not a good time to buy, especially if you're young and your career could take you to places you don't know yet. A house can actually destroy your career because if you think, oh, I'd love to take this great new job in Chicago, but my hands are tight because I just bought this big house and I don't want to sell it and lose $100,000. So be very careful. Again, I have a house. I'm now making it into something I really enjoy that's quite comfortable and a little bit of luxury, but it's not because I think this is going to make me money. In fact, I know I would virtually guarantee that had I continued to rent, I'd be much better off financially in the long run. I'm in a house for the quality of living. I believe everyone should view a home as an expense, not an investment. If you do end up somehow making money, consider that found money. Consider yourself lucky. Do not consider that something that you're entitled to or is just the norm. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Trump, Epstein, and the MAGA Crackup. According to the Times, Donald Trump's battles with two hard-right Republicans, that's right, hard-right Republicans, over the Epstein files exposed a growing fracture inside the MAGA movement. Trump attacked Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene for backing a House vote to force the Justice Department to release Epstein-related documents, as GOP defections mounted and it became clear that many Republicans would ignore him. He abruptly reversed his position and urged them to vote yes. Columnist Michelle Goldberg, a great column today, I'd recommend you check it out in the Times. She argues this episode reveals deeper disillusionment on the right. Longtime supporters frustrated by a shaky economy, allegations of corruption, and Trump's habit of turning on his own allies are finally showing signs of breaking away. Some right-wing influencers even posted burning MAGA hats recently. Goldberg says the longstanding aura that Trump completely controls his movement is starting to fade. So what's the real message here? If you put your ear to the ground and feel the ground, it does feel like the earth is shaking. The ground is actually moving away from Donald Trump right now. He had an iron grip on the MAGA base, and finally they're realizing, wait a minute, we thought there was a big global conspiracy of powerful men who are running pedophile rings and making our lives worse, and it turns out we were right, and this guy's running it. He's not cleaning it up. He was the gang leader. We've had enough. So let's dig a little bit deeper here. I'm not suggesting that Trump is going to have his approval ratings go from his abysmal ratings now, which are about 37%, down to 0 or 5 or 10 or even 20. But he's already on such shaky ground that it doesn't take much for him to lose his base in the House and the Senate. I don't mean in the elections next year. I mean right now, they're going to start standing up to him because they have been so afraid of his wrath because of his popularity. in the Republican Party and the MAGA base. Now they're saying, maybe we can stand up to him, because it became very obvious to Trump that he was going to lose this vote that's scheduled for the House to demand release of the Epstein files. And when two of his staunchest supporters, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, said, sorry, we're with you 100%. We'd do anything for you, but we won't do that. Then he kind of threw in the towel because he didn't want to look like a loser. He didn't want to say, I lost and they won, because that is, frankly, the only thing that would ever give Donald Trump shame, having to admit he lost something. So he just changed courses and now is acting like, well, of course I want to release the Epstein files. I'll let it all out. Now, the whole thing is an absurdity because you don't need a congressional vote to demand the Department of Justice release the Epstein files. They work for Donald Trump. And what we know more than anything in this last 6 months or so is the Department of Justice will do anything Donald Trump tells them to do. It doesn't matter if it's legal. Doesn't matter if it's patently unconstitutional. Doesn't matter if it's something that most lawyers would be afraid to do for fear of losing their law license. They'll do whatever he asks. So if Donald Trump wanted the Epstein files to be released, they would be released. So we're all sort of going through this charade that, well, he's on board now with the congressional vote to release the Epstein files. So, now he's on the good guy side. Well, no, it's again, they could be out right now. So why is this issue resonating? Why do people like me, and I'm not normally into conspiracy theories, talk about this? One of the theories that's gaining circulation is that this is so devastating to Trump because he really has two main appeals to his base. And his base is largely people in smaller towns, rural areas, towns that have been forgotten, towns that have not done well economically in the last decade or two. Trump did not do well in San Francisco or Chicago or New York City or Boston. Big cities where people are actually making stuff, have successful startups, have good paying jobs in tech companies. They didn't vote for Trump. His support came from smaller towns, the Ackman, Ohio's of the world, towns that felt left behind by globalization, and towns where an awful lot of people feel like there is this global elite of billionaires, and they have carved out our economy, taken away our jobs, globalized our jobs, made it so that our own children can't stay in our communities. They've made us all poor. And they're so callous when they're not destroying the economy, making themselves richer and taking from small towns and rural areas. When they're not doing that, they are a part of this cabal that can do anything they want, including molesting our daughters, molesting children, and they're pedophiles. I'm not saying this theory is accurate, but clearly that is a sentiment that many MAGA supporters have. So there was really two main appeals of Donald Trump. He was going to be the guy to say no to globalization. We're going to bring back these economies to small and mid-sized towns and rural areas. He was going to be the guy to do that, number one. Number two, he's the guy, and he ran on this in the campaign, that he would be the guy to release all the Epstein files. So now, what does the typical MAGA supporter see when they're looking at news of the last week, the last month, the last 6 months? Trump is the guy saying, no, I'm not going to release the Epstein files. And according to the Wall Street Journal, his name is in them not once or twice or 5 times or 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times. His name is in the Epstein files, according to the Wall Street Journal, 1,700 times. And he's the guy who was supposed to be on the side of the little guy, the small town America, the traditional values person, to release it. And now it seems like he is the biggest actor in this other than Jeffrey Epstein. Again, I'm not alleging there's proof of any criminality yet, but as far as the the intertwinedness between Trump and Epstein, the ties are very strong. And when you have more and more emails coming out from Epstein saying Trump knew about the girls, Trump is the dog that didn't bark. I got enough to bring down Trump. It starts to make a lot of these MAGA supporters say, well, why were we supporting for that? And then they're asking, okay, there's at least the other issue. He's going to be the guy to help us economically, help the cost of living, help us get our jobs back. And so they look around at their economies in the almost year that Trump has been in office. And what they realize is life isn't any better for them. The cost of living is higher. Trump has consistently taxed them because unfortunately that's what a tariff is. And shame on every single Democratic politician who doesn't constantly refer to it as a tariff tax, because that's what a tariff is. So a lot of people in small towns in America who've seen their lifestyle go from middle class to lower middle class to poor are saying, okay, Trump's been in office for a while. He's supposed to be the big businessman to fix things. He was going to be the guy to stand up to these billionaires ruining our economy and globalizing everything. He's going to do something. So they look in their pocket and say, how much extra cash do I have now that he's been in office for a year? And the answer is none. My wallet is lighter than ever before. That is their own independent analysis, and there's no spin around it. So Trump's supporters are suddenly coming to the conclusion that he's not going to help them economically. He hasn't brought back a single job, according to how most MAGA supporters feel. Are you enjoying all those high-paying coal mining jobs that have come back to West Virginia? I didn't think so, because they didn't come. So you had two main pillars of support for Trump, that he was going to fix the economy, make things more affordable, better jobs for people in small towns, rural America, and he was going to be the guy to go after this global cabal of elites and a pedophile ring headed up by Jeffrey Epstein. He hasn't delivered on either one of those. In fact, he looks now to many MAGA supporters to be the biggest part of the problem. Not only is he not the solution, he's a part of the problem. And in some areas, he looks like he's the number one part of the problem with respect to what's going on in Epstein, because, hey, these members of Congress would love to release these Epstein files. The only reason they didn't is they didn't want to incur the wrath of Trump, because until his big switch Sunday on saying, okay, release the files, as recently as 24 hours earlier, he essentially divorced Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying, because you are in favor of releasing the Epstein files, I'm excommunicating you from the Church of MAGA. And I could take your crazy ideas about space lasers and Jews and all sorts of other nonsense. But because you want to do what you campaigned on and what Trump campaigned on, because you want to do that, release the files, now I'm going to hate you. Now I'm going to ban you from the White House. Now I'm going to try to get someone to run against you. And that's just striking a lot of his own supporters as insane. And that's why, as I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, it just feels like the ground is shaking and cracking apart underneath Trump. And one of his biggest supporters, Tim Dillon, the comedian podcaster, who I happen to think is hilarious, is saying this is essentially the end of Trump. I don't know if I'm ready to go that far. But Tim Dillon is saying this now is officially making him a lame duck, and his vice-like grip over Republican members of Congress is over. What do you think? Feel free to share your comments. You can share your comments if you're watching us live today or listening. If you're watching this on demand, post your comments, your questions, your critiques, and I will read them and get back to you. We will be back in just a moment. There's more to come. Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight, so if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Your direct line to everything I do. Is ABC ready to walk away from Shark Tank? According to TV Ratings Guide, ABC's longtime reality series Shark Tank is suffering the weakest season in its history. Some episodes have fallen to a ratings low of 0.11 in the key demographic, making it the poorest performer among ABC's entertainment shows. Viewership has dropped sharply from earlier highs, and delayed viewing adds very little. Yet an outright cancellation still appears unlikely. For 16 years, Shark Tank has been one of ABC's most recognizable brands, helping to launch major products and generating hundreds of millions of dollars in on-air deals. Analysts expect the network to experiment with a different time slot or a refreshed format before seriously considering retiring the franchise that turned venture capital into primetime entertainment. Okay, so what's the real message here with Shark Tank getting ratings so low that people are talking about canceling it? The real message is it's amazing they ever got on the air. The premise of, hey, I'm going to have a TV show where it's a bunch of business people sitting around having a business meeting, giving presentations. I would have thought that would have been laughed out of every TV network, and yet they've had a great 16-year run. Good for them. Let's dig a little deeper here. Now, as someone who has spent his life dealing with public speaking and media training, I'm fascinated by the show. I'm not a regular viewer, but certainly I have watched. I've had clients, I've had friends go on the show. Some of them were given good deals. One friend in particular went on the show and was mocked and ridiculed for being the single worst new business idea ever. No, I did not train that particular individual, but it's a huge part of our pop culture. It's fascinating to me. Now, there was a show on the year earlier, very similar, American Inventor. I happened to train one of the original judges for that show. So I was very excited about that show. That one didn't take off after the first year or two, but then this one, Shark Tank, did really well. Here's the real lesson for you and for me. Almost any idea, no matter how bad it is, if you are creative enough, if you're thoughtful enough, if you package it in a new way, you can breathe life into that idea. Because again, the basic concept of instead of an interesting drama or a fantastic stand-up comedy show or sitcom, I want to do a primetime show on network TV of people sitting around in a business meeting. On the face of that, that is the dumbest idea ever. And yet it's made tens, hundreds of millions of dollars at this point and attracted huge audiences because they made it interesting. And they did it in a handful of ways. They brought in interesting judges, obviously, people well known from pop culture like Mark Cuban. They created controversy. They gave extensive coaching to the entrepreneurs. They did not let an entrepreneur stand up, turn their back to the judges and start reading bullet points from a PowerPoint slide. They said, no, you're not even going to do that. We don't even consider you for this show if you think you're going to do that. And that was smart. Guess what? It's always smart if you're giving a new business pitch to not turn your back on the investors and start reading bullet points. And yet people do it all the time. Let's look at some more numbers here. Mark Cuban he's either exited or is about to exit. He's not doing any more new shows, but he's been on for 14 years. That's a long, long run. The show has generated $200 million in deals for entrepreneurs. A lot of businesses have been made from their appearance on that show, partially because they got some investment from the panelists, the sharks. More often, they didn't take investments, but the publicity they got from going on the show attracted actual customers or clients, or in some cases, other investors. So a lot of people benefited by going on that show. I do have one friend, very successful entrepreneur and founder of the Zero shoe company, went on, didn't like the terms, but the publicity of being on Shark Tank helped really get attention as he started that company, which is still around. And I own a pair, and I think I have 1 or 2 shares of stock, and like $100 worth of the stock. But so I'm not talking up my book here. But the Zero shoes, if you want to check that out in the archives on YouTube, it's a fascinating example of how you can attract attention by giving a good pitch. And even if you don't get the terms you want from an investor, it can lead to other good things. The other lesson I have for you is it's especially applicable today when we can all do YouTube shows and TikTok shows, is don't convince yourself that your topic isn't interesting enough for a show. You might sell concrete, and it might seem like a commodity to everyone else. You could make it a YouTube show where it potentially benefits your business. And now maybe you don't get on NBC or CNBC or ABC, but maybe you build enough of a following for your show in your industry that it makes you a real player in your industry, that all of the top stakeholders in your industry want to deal with you, and it gets more business for you. It gets you more prominence at annual conferences for your industry. So what I want you to think about is think about what you do professionally and ask yourself, isn't there a way you can involve other people, perhaps competitors? It doesn't have to be a show about pitching new investments or seeking money. It could just be a show about trends in your industry. Think about how you can make it more interesting. Bring in different voices. Bring in people who don't always agree with each other. That's certainly a part of the appeal of Shark Tank, is the sharks often disagree with each other vehemently. That conflict makes for interesting viewing, attracts an audience, and gets more attention. So I want you to think about that, because I got to tell you, if the producers of Shark Tank can get rich, which they've done, be successful, be on network TV, and also replayed a gazillion times on cable network as they are on CNBC, if they can do that, where the basic concept is a bunch of people sitting around in a business meeting, what's stopping you from creating a show that puts a spotlight on something you care about? I'm also fascinated by this because I personally pitched many shows like this that relate to public speaking and presenting. And many years before this started, I started something called the Pitching Well, which was an online version of this. And it went nowhere. It didn't mean the idea was bad and I was destined to fail. No, it meant I wasn't a good enough producer. It meant I wasn't creative enough to make it happen. It was my failure. It wasn't the concept failure. So I have a lot of respect for the people who got this on the air, made it happen. And it's to the point where it's really a part of pop culture. It so resonates with so many people in other aspects of our pop culture. It's a huge success. So if you're canceled, believe me, there's no shame in being canceled after 14 years on network TV. So rather than say, I'm sorry, Shark Tank, or you better not be canceled, I just want to say, congratulations. It's been a great run. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Welcome back to Filtered. Bill Ackman's May I Meet You dating advice backfires. Billionaire hedge fund manager and prominent MAGA donor Bill Ackman is going viral for offering a simple piece of dating advice to young men. He said that in his youth, he would walk up to women and ask, "May I meet you?" He claimed the line almost never failed and credited its success to proper grammar and politeness. Well, social media had a field day with this. They immediately turned the phrase into a meme. Users pasted, "May I meet you?" over awkward party photos, dead silent dating app message screens, and side-by-side images that contrasted how the line plays coming from a billionaire versus an ordinary guy. Ackman framed his advice as concern for young men who feel shut out of dating and relationships. Critics called it tone deaf and out of touch, arguing that wealth, status, and power probably did more of the work than the sentence itself. Okay, so what's the real message here with Bill Ackman getting so much guff over telling young men to walk up to women and say, "May I meet you?" as a good opening pitch? Believe me, there are 1,000 things to not like about Bill Ackman. There are times I wish he would just get off the national stage. But this advice isn't bad. Just because you don't like someone, if you have a new excuse, a tool to actually talk to a human being rather than staring at your phone and being addicted to video games or porn, you should probably follow the advice. Let's go a little deeper here. The easiest thing for any internet commentator, someone like me, to do is to mock and ridicule Bill Ackman. He's someone that recently he turned himself into a professional tennis player by using his money and clout to get into a professional tennis tournament. People hated that. He is trying to get university presidents fired and was successful. He's meddling into international affairs. He is backing political extreme. There's a million things I personally don't like about Bill Ackman. But I'm here today and every day to be the sane, sensible centrist, to give you what I feel is unvarnished truth and insight that will actually help you. And I have to tell you, I think he's on to something. There is a massive, massive problem in our culture where human beings are just not talking to other human beings as much. It's especially a problem with young people. And sorry, this sounds sexist. It's especially a problem for young men who have essentially, tens of millions of them have retreated from living in the real world. They're so much more comfortable staying at home, looking at porn on a cell phone. Maybe they're on dating apps swiping and maybe never even go out on a date, but they have retreated. They've retreated from dealing with the real world. Scott Galloway, the famed internet commentator and author of the new #1 New York Times best-selling book, Notes on Being a Man, talks about this problem extensively, and that people, and in this case, men, need to get used to talking to women if they have any interest in dating, a social life, mating, procreating. You have to talk to them first. And Bill Ackman's line, again, the line is he would walk up to women and simply state, "May I meet you?" And it's been laughed at, ridiculed, mocked all over the internet. And believe me, I think Bill Ackman is someone set up well for mockery. But let's actually analyze the line. His rationale was it's a low risk way for a man walking up and talking to a woman. It's not trying to be funny. It's not anything that would make a woman uncomfortable in most situations. I mean, you can say anyone can be uncomfortable in any situation, but as far as things to say, it's not aggressive. It seems very polite. It seems deferential. He's correct. It seems polite. It's two things. It's polite and it's showing good grammar, because most young men don't ever use the word may. They would say, can I meet you, which is technically not correct grammar. So you've got those two things going, and it's very easy at that point for a woman to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy. You walk away. He didn't say then badger them. He didn't say, well, then tell them how rich you are. He didn't say, well, then, then I showed them my Harvard degree. He didn't say any of that. He just said, here's a sentence I used to talk to human beings. And when I was young and single and I wanted to talk to women, that's what it was. I actually think it's good advice. If you think it's cheesy or awful, okay, what are you using? Because we've talked about this on the show before. Everyone's worried about AI destroying humanity and the singularity coming. There's another concept that's getting a lot of talk these days, which is the sofa-larity, the point at which nobody gets off their sofa anymore because they can just do everything on their cell phone, in which case no one's ever going to meet or have children, because you can't do that if you never leave your own studio apartment sitting on your sofa all day long. Of course, you could quibble with the context. Bill Ackman is, by every sort of traditional metric, he's good looking. He's 6'3". He's athletic. He was on his college tennis team. He is smart and articulate. He went to Harvard and Harvard Business School. I don't know what he looked like in college, but he is about almost 60 years old now. He has a perfect head of hair, is in shape, and is 6'3". So he obviously had factors like that going in his favor, where even if a woman didn't know he was rich, and presumably he wasn't worth $10 billion when he was 22 years old, using this line, it worked for him. You can say it was contextual because he was tall and good looking anyway. All right, it's a fair criticism. But ask yourself, if you are a woman, and forgive me, I am talking about the most statistically commonplace social interaction of young men approaching young women because they are interested in pursuing romance and dating. Is it really that offensive to say, may I meet you? Now, if the person looks and smells dirty or creepy, it doesn't matter what they say. It's going to be, get away from me. But if the person is relatively clean and seems well-mannered and doesn't seem drunk or on drugs and ask a simple question, I got to give this one to Bill Ackman. I'm sorry, that's going to offend some people. It'd be much easier for me to go viral here on social media if I just ripped him a new one and said, this is the worst thing anyone ever said. But I try to give it to you straight and the honest assessment, because I do think it's good advice. If you don't like the advice, come up with some other conversation starter. And it doesn't have to be because you're trying to find a date or romantically. You could be my age and going to a community barbecue and just wanting to make more friends with more families. What are you going to say to people to just get a conversation going? That is something I think all of us can try to improve on a regular basis. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40 plus years of real world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to advertise to ambitious upscale professionals who actually care about communication, success, and results? Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. And no, we don't take ads for crypto, supplements, or junk food. Ted Danson's Life is Fun at Any Age playbook. Actor Ted Danson says turning 70 didn't signal a time to slow down. It was a reminder to stay in motion, although he says he's thought about slowing down. Speaking with People magazine this week about his Netflix series, A Man on the Inside, Danson said playing a retiree turned investigator reinforced the idea that you have to get out there, stay curious, keep your foot on the gas. He admitted that at 70, he thought he should step back. But as he approaches 78, he tells himself to stay hopeful and engaged. Danson says that mindset is good for physical health, good for energy, and makes life more fun at any age. His own career reflects that philosophy. He's leading a new season of a hit show, working again with The Good Place creator, Mike Schur, acting alongside his wife, Mary Steenburgen, and recording a long-running podcast with Woody Harrelson. Okay, so what's the real message here? You and I need to be more like Ted Danson. I don't mean have a great head of hair. I mean keep moving, keep being active. Say yes to every opportunity that comes alive. Get out of the house. That is his secret to being so active and vital at age 78. Let's dig a little deeper here. Now, I've long been a fan of Ted Danson. I just find him funny and interesting. I especially like him appearing as himself on the HBO series Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm. But I also saw everything from A Man on the Inside. I would recommend that show. But I'm not here to give you theater criticism or tell you what TV shows to watch. To me, the interesting thing is his philosophy of life and why it's making him successful. I don't mean financially, although he's been very financially successful. It's keeping him vital. It's keeping him young. I mean, he obviously looks older than he did when he was in Cheers 40 years ago, but he stays in shape. His voice sounds the same. He moves, to me, much younger, the way he moves, than what the average almost 80-year-old person looks like when they are walking. And I think it's this idea of he's not going to just sit back and watch TV and say, well, I'm retired now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of the concept of retirement. Can you switch out of one job and go into other things? Sure. But so often when people say they retire, what they really mean is they withdraw from the world. They withdraw from society. Life becomes about sitting around on TV, complaining about something you saw on television, and complaining that your grandkids don't call you often enough. And it makes everyone around you miserable. Ted Danson, I don't know him personally, doesn't seem like he's miserable. Seems like he's having a blast. Now, it's amazing just his sheer productivity. It seems like no matter where I turn on the dial or what streaming app I'm using, there he is in another show. Just since he turned 70, he has starred in The Good Place, The Orville. I never even saw that. Curb Your Enthusiasm, I saw him there. Mr. Mayor, I never even saw that. Mulligan, I didn't see that. And A Man on the Inside, which I did watch every episode. So, I mean, the guy is working all the time. And with all that going on, he's done 150 episodes of a podcast with Woody Harrelson, another really famous, successful actor who he united with originally on the cast of Cheers. So he doesn't need a podcast to make money. He is, according to, and you have to take this with a grain of sold, but according to estimates on the internet, he's worth north of $80 million, possibly as much as $100 million. But when you look at the sheer number of TV shows he's on and the residuals he must have received, it's hard to imagine he's not worth $100 million. So clearly, he has no financial needs. He's doing a podcast because it's fun. He likes talking to Woody Harrelson. And he says it gives him an opportunity to talk to all sorts of famous celebrities, other experts that he wouldn't normally have the nerve to just call up and talk to or say, meet me for lunch. That's a fantastic attitude. People ask me all the time, TJ, what should I do for I want to do a podcast. What should I do? How do I make this work? My advice is to essentially, even if you're not worth 100 million like Ted Danson, do what you want that's fun and interesting. Maybe it does turn into something that's financially lucrative, but do it first and foremost for fun and see how it blossoms. So, Ted Danson, I hope we see you in a lot of TV shows and the occasional movie next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. Keep it up. And he's very similar in some respects to Jerry Seinfeld and Paul McCartney, people who are wildly successful creators and who are fabulously wealthy. And they don't retire. They keep doing the stuff they like to do because it's not strenuous like working in an Amazon factory, having to pick up 500-pound couches. It's talking to people and moving. In the case of Paul McCartney, singing and composing. So I hope wherever you are in your career, realize you don't have to retire. Maybe we can't all be as successful and as famous as Ted Danson, but we all can continue to do new things that test us and stretch us, where maybe we fail sometimes and maybe they turn out to be big successes. Okay, that concludes the main section of our show. We typically just do 5 sections of the show topics. Today, we did 6 because I just found them interesting. We also typically go through a few grab bag issues. I'm going to try to be brief with these and get you out of here. Bitcoin falls below 90,000. Bitcoin has dropped. It has dropped significantly, which, believe it or not, I think is wonderful. I love it when Bitcoin drops. I know I'm going to make some enemies there, but it's below $90,000 for the first time in 7 months, wiping out its gains for the year. The world's largest cryptocurrency is almost 30% off its October peak, above $126,000. Analysts say investors are rethinking risk as doubts grow about future interest rate cuts and global markets turn more cautious. Ether has also slumped, losing nearly 40% from its recent high. Crypto-linked stocks such as MicroStrategy, Riot Platforms, Marathon, and Coinbase are sliding as well. For investors who believe this year's rally signaled a new era of stability for digital assets, the latest sell-off is a reminder of how quickly sentiment can turn. Okay, I'm going to lay my cards out here, be very blunt with you. I think all cryptocurrency is an utter scam. I think they are a combination of pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes. They deliver no value, and they should be outlawed. There, I said it. You can hate me, you can leave the nasty comments, but I, for one, cheer every time I see Bitcoin go down. I wish you well. I want you to make money. I really do. I'm pulling for you. But I want you to actually invest in real businesses that create real products and real services that help people and to make money that way. When you're betting on something that has no intrinsic value, the only value, there's 2 main values to all cryptocurrencies. One, if I want to extort someone or do a drug deal or try to do something illegal, it can, not always, but it can give me privacy. Number 2, there's a chance I can find a bigger sucker tomorrow to pay more for it tomorrow than what I paid for it today. That's the value of it. And I realize some people don't want to hear that. They don't like that. But that is the honest to goodness truth. So I beg of you, spend your money on investing, number one, in yourself, skills that can help other people. Number two, invest in real businesses. And it's never been easier to do that than through index funds, where it's extremely low cost and you're not giving all your money away to some so-called financial advisor. So that's it for the grab bag today. We're going to switch over and end the show as we always do, taking questions from you. And specifically, this part of the show, I take questions from my students. So as some of you have heard me say before, I have more than 12 million online students for my personal development courses, communication skills courses around the globe. This is a question that comes from a student in my 1-hour guide, my 1-hour course to guide your financial path. This is from Pranav. And the question is, what are the most practical steps a beginner can take to start generating passive income within a short time frame? Okay, relates very much to the last topic there about Bitcoin. So that is a question that obsesses a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, but really everyone. And I apologize, Pranav, I don't think you're going to like my answer. The number one thing you can do to generate so-called passive income is to tell yourself there's no such thing as passive income. You need to act. You need to learn hard skills that can be valuable to other people. So when you sell your services and you sell your products, people value them and they give you money. And it can't be done overnight. I would say the sheer fact that you're trying to look to make quick money easily. When you say passive, what you really mean to say, and I don't mean to sound too harsh to you, we all feel like this from time to time. When you say you want passive income quickly, what you really are saying is you want to get rich quick. Once you have that mindset, certainly any time you type something like that into the internet, you are going to be besieged with every con artist in the world. Every scam artist is going to think, oh, you're fresh meat, you're prey. I'm going to sell you some program. Here's your way to day trade. You'll make millions within 6 weeks. Just buy my day trading program online course for $2,500. Hey, what's $2,500 if I'm going to make $1 million in 6 weeks? And then you spend the money and then you get nothing. So I urge you, the first step is to change your time frame. Think about how can you actually make money doing something valuable. Anytime I even hear the word passive income, I quickly look around, I grab my wallet because I figure someone's about to try to steal from me or con me. Now, I'm being a little bit glib saying there's no such thing as passive income. If your parents are wealthy and you have an inheritance of $1 million and you get into a time machine and you go back to 1965 and you passively invest your money into Berkshire Hathaway, managed by Warren Buffett. Well, today you're a billionaire and it was all passive. Okay, but unless your parents are giving you $1 million and you have a time machine, that strategy doesn't work. Now, you can passively make income. The safest thing is to put it into a savings account or an interest-bearing check account, and maybe you make, 1%. That will make money, not making money quickly. I don't think that's what you want. Of course, you can buy Bitcoin today. It could go up tomorrow, and you make $100,000. If it goes up 10% in one day and you put $1 million down, you can also lose everything. So I'm urging you, Pranav, I want you to be successful in the long term. People who are successful in the long term are not looking to make a quick buck. They're not trying to get rich quick. Get rich slowly. And I know it's not sexy. I also think that many times people talk about something as passive and they spend more time and energy and effort working on that. I've personally gotten sucked into, we were talking about real estate earlier today. I personally have got sucked into the idea that, oh, you can make money off of real estate because it's so-called passive income. Anyone who's ever bought a home and turned it into, or an apartment and turned it into a rental property and tells you it's passive income, they are lying to you. They are liars. Sorry to say that. They're probably trying to sell you their house that they've already lost money on. Real estate is actually extraordinarily active. It takes a lot of time. It's not passive in the sense that you just sort of sit back and once a year or once a month, you get a statement of how much money you made. Now, there are differing degrees of so-called passive income. Some people define passive income as anything that makes you money where you're in control of your own calendar, where you're not having to show up at an office at 9 a.m. when a boss is saying, be here to get your salary, where you're not a consultant or a babysitter having to show up at a set time and being paid by the hour. There are ways of making money where it's not that sort of active employment. And I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't tell you the main way I did that. Most of my wealth has been generated by what other people call passive income. I've made most of my money through online courses. I have 300 online courses with 12 million students around the world. So if I'm sleeping, someone can buy that course, or, on many nights, hundreds of people buy the course. The next morning, I have more money. But I didn't just snap my fingers and have all those courses made. I had to spend thousands of hours making all those courses. So it was active. So if you're willing to do the hard work, then I urge you, create intellectual property. It could be an online course. It could be an evergreen YouTube channel about some hobby. It could be a novel. It could be a movie. It could be a song. Create intellectual property. Do it consistently. Experiment. Listen to the marketplace. Tweak. Try to improve. Over time, you could, in fact, make a lot of passive income. But I've never seen it happen unless people spent years of hard. Yeah, Mr. Beast is making a lot of money these days. Go look at his videos, his first 5 years on YouTube. You can tell he didn't make any money. He spent thousands of hours honing his craft in order to be in a position now where he can put out a video and it generates millions of dollars. So that's my number one advice for you, Pranav. Create intellectual property. And if you make money short term, great. But think long term. That's when the passive income really starts coming in, when your investments grow and grow and grow, especially if you put it in a low-cost index fund and you don't touch it. That's the ultimate key to passive income. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me today here on Filtered. If you're new to the show, please do me a favor and like the show, sign up for notifications, subscribe on any platform you're on. If you are listening to a podcast platform, then please leave a review and be sure to subscribe and follow. Now, I missed a few questions that came in. We had some technical difficulties, so in our time remaining, let me try to answer these. Okay, can you confirm if the new investigation he launched will delay the release indefinitely? Okay, so the viewer is talking about the Epstein files, and President Trump has announced that he is now favoring the congressional resolution to tell the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. Now, just a day or two before that, he sent instructions via social media, of course, to the Department of Justice to start new investigations on Democrats. So in theory, in normal times, and nothing about any of this is normal or by traditional metrics legal, in normal times, if there's an active investigation, the Department of Justice doesn't release any information. But this is not normal time. In normal times, you don't have a president saying, hey, the whole world sees me implicated in a huge scandal, and there's 1,700 mentions of my name intertwined with this convicted felon pedophile. But now, to take the heat off me, I'm just going to instruct the Department of Justice to investigate Democrats to kind of change the. That's never happened before in the real world. So, in answer to your question, when it comes to predicting what Trump will do, that's a bit of a fool's errand. Typically, the only prediction where you're on solid ground is to assume that he will do whatever he wants that he thinks will help him the most in the short term. And so he could, in theory, say, hey, I've told the Department of Justice to release all the files, but they're telling me their hands are tied because there's an active investigation. He could play that card. I don't think that would help him politically. I don't think any mainstream person, any centrist, any moderate, or any Democrat would find that credible. And I also think it would outrage his own base because they want to know what really happened with Epstein and the 1,000+ women, girls, I should say, who were abused through his network of people. And at this point, an awful lot of them want to know if Trump was one of the abusers. So we're just going to have to see how this twists and turns, and it does every single day. Next question. Blue writes, love your energy, sharing your profile with our recruiters. Okay. Well, Blue, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. You mentioned recruiting. I hope I don't get spam text saying, hey, we've spotted you for a great job where you can make $40 an hour and click here. There seems to be a rash of spam and junk, not just junk email, but junk texts. So I don't know what you're referring to with recruiters. I definitely don't want a full-time job. I've got one right here that I really love at running my own companies. Okay, next question from @Fern. Do you feel the forthcoming documents will reveal only Democrats as participants in Epstein? So that's essentially what Trump was trying to do as of just a couple of days ago. I think we're past the time where that's going to work. And by all means, we talked about one Democrat today, Larry Summers, well-known Democratic Secretary of the Treasury, who's been implicated. His reputation has been ruined, rightfully so. But the Wall Street Journal has already documented there are 1,700 mentions of Trump's name. That's just in the documents that have been released so far. Now, I do want to go a little bit deeper on one nuance that I learned just today. So there's obviously the fear that Trump, with his henchmen and henchwomen at the Department of Justice, will simply say, release every document related to Epstein, just hold back anything with my name in it. And that was my initial concern. But others have pointed out that basically every document that the Department of Justice has is also in the hands of lawyers who were involved with this young woman, other legal entities, other local legal officials, the victims themselves. So if the Trump administration tries to release everything selectively and says, okay, all the documents are out, everything is out, at that point, the other lawyers, the Epstein, foundation, whatever you call it, others can say, oh, since you want all of them to be out, here's more. And it's going to be a little awkward for the Trump administration to say, no, we didn't mean those, put those back in. They're not going to be able to put them back. So I am getting more and more optimistic every day that if not every single document, the vast, vast majority of ones, especially any that incriminate well-known people, will be coming out shortly. So to answer to your question, Fern, it's possible initially it's just Democrats. Nobody, and at this point, I don't really think Marjorie Taylor Greene or any Republican thinks that Epstein only had Democrats in his circle. It's just not plausible or credible to anyone, regardless of your politics or your party preferences. Next question comes from Kyle. Money is a means to an end, not the end, the result of choosing the passion. I think you're relating to that to our segment on Ted Danson. Yeah, follow your passion. Ted Danson is not working because he's got to pay rent. Ted Danson is not in half a dozen TV shows right now because he's got to pay his mortgage. He's working because he has a passion for it. Gerald writes, may you make presumptions that your viewers are rational when truth is an issue. Or Gerald Allen May says, do you make presumptions that your viewers are rational? I try to respect you. Obviously, every human being has some irrational side. I'm not completely rational. You could make a case it's not rational for any one person to have children. Well, I love my daughter more than anything. Not necessarily rational, but I do love her. So as humans, everybody has an irrational component. I recognize that. I don't dismiss that in others because I have that in myself. But yes, one of the premises of this show and how I try to have a conversation with you on a daily basis is that we can live in a world where rational discussion, debate can take place, where people can be respected. As I mentioned to you, this show and others, I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not trying to spin anything. Now, you may disagree with me from time to time. You may disagree with what you perceive as a principle I have that's different from yours. That's okay. But I do believe that all human beings at some level are rational in the sense that they look at the world through a set of principles and they're trying to rationalize how this new data confirms with their worldview. So, in a sense, other than someone who's just clinically insane, everybody is rational in their own mind. I'm trying to reach as many people as I can with one slice, one take of the world as my own brain attempts to rationalize and deliver insights in an honest way. Thanks so much for joining me today. Appreciate you joining me later. Our live feed did go out later today. And a special thanks to all of our friends on TikTok today who had to see me go through a lot of technical problems and starts and stops because there was a major outage on the internet today. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.